Dr. Hannah Kim stood at the edge of the massive excavation site, her breath forming small clouds in the thin atmosphere of the dead planet. The artificial gravity generators hummed quietly behind her, keeping the dig team stable on the barren surface. Above them, the research vessel Prometheus Dawn hung in the dark sky like a metal moon. "Are you seeing this, Captain?" Hannah spoke into her communication device, her voice filled with excitement and disbelief. Captain Minho Park's voice crackled through the speaker. "I'm seeing it, Dr. Kim, but I'm not sure I believe it." The structure before them was unlike anything humanity had ever discovered. It rose from the planet's surface like a crystalline mountain, its surface smooth and black as space itself. The crystal seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating an unsettling void in the landscape. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with a blue-green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "The carbon dating doesn't make sense," Dr. Jinwoo Lee said, checking his scanner for the 10th time. The young physicist had been working non-stop since they discovered the structure 3 days ago. "This thing is older than any known civilization. Older than the Vorthok Empire. Older than the Luminar Collective. It predates everything we know about galactic history." Engineer Sora. Choi looked up from her drilling equipment, wiping sweat from her forehead. "The material is impossible, too. It's not responding to any of our cutting tools. The molecular structure keeps shifting every time we try to analyze it." Hannah walked closer to the crystal, her scanner beeping steadily. The symbols on the surface seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them, like words written in water. "Look at these inscriptions. They're changing. Changing how?" Minho's voice came through the cum, sharp with concern. "The symbols. They're different now than they were an hour ago. It's like they're alive, rewriting themselves." Hannah pressed her gloved hand against the crystal surface. The moment her palm touched it, the symbols flashed brighter, and a low vibration ran through the ground beneath their feet. "Dr. Kim, step away from that thing," Minho ordered. "I don't like this. The alien ships that were monitoring us have been pulling back all morning. The Vorthok captain sent a message saying they're withdrawing to a safe distance." "Safe distance from what?" Jinwoo asked, but he was already setting up his quantum resonance scanner. "This could be the discovery of the century, Captain. Can't. Just walk away now." Sora shook her head. "The Vorthok don't scare easily. They've been exploring space for thousands of years. If they're running, maybe we should listen." But Hannah was already lost in the mystery. She had spent her entire career studying ancient civilizations, and this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. The crystal was clearly artificial, but it was older than the oldest known species in the galaxy. Who had built it? Why was it here on this dead world at the edge of known space? "The quantum signatures are off the charts," Jinwoo announced, his equipment humming to life. "This thing is resonating with frequencies that shouldn't exist. It's like it's vibrating in dimensions we can't even measure." "That doesn't sound safe," Sora said, backing away from her drilling equipment. "Maybe we should call this into Earth Command first, and let them shut down the dig before we learn anything," Hannah shot back. "This is the find of a lifetime. Sora, we can't let bureaucrats and politicians decide what happens here." Minho's voice came through the cum again, more urgent now. "Dr. Kim, I'm getting reports from the other alien vessels. They're not just withdrawing, they're fleeing the sector entirely. The Luminar sent a message in ancient galactic standard. They're calling this place the Forbidden Ground. All the more reason to study it." Adjusting his scanner. "Settings. If every species in the galaxy is afraid of this place, we need to know why." The quantum scanner's pitch rose higher, and the crystal began to pulse faster. The symbols on its surface glowed brighter, and new ones appeared, spreading across the dark surface like cracks in ice. "Jinwoo, what are you doing?" Hannah asked, noticing the change in the crystal's behavior. "I'm just running a standard quantum resonance scan. It's harmless. I use this equipment all the time in my lab." But even as he spoke, Jinwoo could see that his scanner was picking up readings he had never seen before. The crystal wasn't just responding to his scan, it was answering back. The vibration in the ground grew stronger. Small rocks began to lift into the air around the crystal, hovering as if gravity had stopped working. The symbols on the surface were now moving visibly, flowing like liquid light across the black stone. "That's enough," Sora said, moving toward. Jinwoo's equipment shut it down. Now. But before she could reach the scanner, the crystal pulsed once, bright as a star. The pulse spread outward like ripples in a pond. But these ripples moved through space itself, faster than light, carrying a signal into the depths of the galaxy. "What did you do?" Anna whispered, staring at the crystal as it began to change. The black surface was becoming transparent, revealing something moving inside. Something vast and ancient and wrong. Jinwoo's scanner was screaming now, its readings jumping wildly. "I don't know. Quantum field is collapsing or expanding, I can't tell which." Captain Minho's voice cut through the cum, filled with panic. "All teams, emergency evacuation now. The Vorthok captain just sent a message. They're detecting something waking up out there. Something big." The crystal continued to pulse, each flash brighter than the last. The symbols had spread to cover the entire surface now, and they were moving faster, as if trying to tell a story, in a language that hurt to look at. "It's not just a crystal," Hannah realized, her voice barely a whisper. "It's a beacon. And we just turned it on." The ground beneath them began to crack, not from earthquake, but from something far worse. Reality itself was beginning to bend around the crystal, as if space and time were being pulled toward it like water down a drain. "Run," Sora said, grabbing her equipment. Everyone run. Now. As they fled toward the shuttle that would take them back to the Prometheus dawn, Hannah looked back once. The crystal was fully transparent now, and inside it something was stirring, something that had been sleeping for millions of years, waiting for someone foolish enough to wake it up. The beacon's light reached into the darkness between stars, carrying a message that would be received by things that should never have been disturbed. And in that moment, Dr. Hannah Kim realized that humanity had just made the greatest mistake in its history. The fire had been lit. Now they would have to face whatever came out of the darkness to answer its call. Ambassador Kyung-min had worked at the Galactic Council for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The massive station that housed representatives from 200 different species was in complete chaos. Alien diplomats who had never shown fear in their entire lives were abandoning their posts and fleeing toward the outer sectors. "What do you mean the Vorthok are evacuating their colonies?" she asked the reptilian ambassador who was packing his belongings with shaking claws. The sleeper stirs. The Vorthok hissed, his usually calm voice filled with terror. "Your species has awakened what should never wake. We go to the deep void, far from here, far from the coming darkness." Kyung-min watched in confusion as the ancient Vorthok, who had ruled space for 10,000 years, loaded their ships and prepared to flee. These were the same beings who had fought wars against black holes and tamed dying stars. What could possibly make them run? The energy beings called the Luminar were even worse. Their usual bright flowing forms had condensed into tight defensive spheres of pure light. They spoke in old frequency patterns that hurt to hear, repeating the same message over and over. The unnamed comes. The devourer of light awakens. Flee to the edge of all things. "Ambassador Min," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Elder Yunishin, the oldest human xenobiologist in the galaxy. The elderly woman's face was pale with worry. "Elder Shin, what's happening? Why is everyone running?" Yuna gestured for her to sit down. "I need to tell you something that most humans don't know. Something I've been studying for 40 years. She pulled out a data pad filled with ancient texts and star charts. Every civilization in this galaxy has legends about something they call by different names. The Vorthok call it the Sleeper. Luminor call it the Devourer of Light. The gas cloud beings call it the Silence Between Stars. Legends about what? About something that came before all of them? Something that has been sleeping in the spaces between reality for millions of years. Something that our research team just woke up." Kyung-min felt ice in her stomach. "Talking about Dr. Kim's discovery? I've been tracking the quantum pulse that came from their dig site. It's not just a signal, Ambassador. It's a wake-up call. And whatever it called to is starting to answer." Meanwhile, back on the dead planet, Dr. Hannah Kim was learning the truth the hard way. The crystal had become completely transparent, and through it, she could see into somewhere else, somewhere that shouldn't exist. "Captain, you need to see this," she called into her communicator. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "Dr. Kim, we're preparing for emergency jump. The quantum readings from that crystal are spreading through subspace. Whatever you activated, it's calling to something in deep space. It's not calling to something, Captain. It's calling from something. The crystal isn't a beacon. It's a prison." And we just unlocked the door. Through the transparent crystal, Hannah could see a vast darkness that moved with purpose. It wasn't empty space. It was something that consumed space, leaving nothing behind. Not even the concept of nothing. "The symbols on the crystal," she continued. "Her scanner recording everything. They're not decorative. They're a warning. A message left by whoever built this prison. They're trying to tell us what they locked away." Dr. Jinwoo Lee was working frantically with his equipment, trying to understand what was happening to the fabric of space around them. The quantum field is collapsing in on itself. No, wait, it's being eaten. Something is consuming the very structure of reality. Engineer Sora Choi pointed to the horizon. "Look at the sky. Where before there had been stars, now there was something else. A growing patch of absolute nothingness that made the eye hurt to look at. It wasn't darkness. Darkness was something. This was the absence of anything at all." "It's spreading," Sora whispered. "Whatever's in there, it's coming through." The shuttle arrived just as the first wave of wrongness hit the planet. Reality bent and twisted around the crystal, and for a moment, the laws of physics simply stopped working. Gravity flowed sideways. Light moved in circles. Time hiccuped. "Everyone get to the shuttle now, Captain Minho." Park's voice crackled. "Through the cum. We're losing the quantum anchors that keep this dimension stable." As they ran for the shuttle, Hannah looked back at the crystal one more time. Inside it, she could see something stirring. Something vast and ancient and hungry. It had been waiting for so long, and now it was finally free to feed. The shuttle lifted off just as the zone of nothingness reached the crystal. The moment it touched the prison, the entire structure simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Vaporized. It just stopped being, as if it had never been there at all. "Captain," Hannah said into her communicator as they flew toward the Prometheus Dawn, "we need to warn Earth. We need to warn everyone." "Warn them about what, Dr. Kim?" "About
what's coming."
the entity in that crystal. It's not just dangerous. It's not just powerful. It's something that eats existence itself. According to these readings, it's been doing it for millions of years. Back on the Galactic Council station, Elder Yunishin was showing Ambassador Kyung-min the old texts. She had collected every major extinction event in galactic history. Every civilization that just disappeared overnight. Every natural disaster that wiped out entire species when they were on the verge of greatness. They all have one thing in common. What's that? They all happened when species got too powerful, too advanced, too close to understanding the deeper mysteries of the universe. As if something was keeping the galaxy from advancing too far. Kyung! Min stared at the data. "You're saying this thing has been controlling galactic development for millions of years." "Not controlling, culling. Like a farmer cutting down wheat that grows too tall. It lets civilizations develop to a certain point, then it removes them before they can become a threat." "A threat to what?" "To it. This entity, whatever it is, has been the galaxy's hidden master for eons. It's been sleeping, but watching. And now humanity has woken it up." The communication board lit up with emergency signals from across the galaxy. Star systems were going dark. It's not destroyed by war or natural disaster, but simply ceasing to exist. The expanding zone of nothingness was spreading faster than light itself, consuming everything in its path. How do we fight something like that? Kyung Min asked. Elder Yunishin looked at the data streaming in from the outer sectors. Entire civilizations were vanishing in moments, leaving no trace they had ever existed. I don't know if we can. But I know one thing about humans that might make a difference. What's that? We're too stupid to know when we're beaten? And sometimes, that's exactly what the universe needs. The entity was awake now, and it was hungry. It had been patient for so long, waiting for the galaxy to forget the old warnings. Now it was time to feed again, to reduce this crowded universe back to the simple, quiet emptiness it preferred. But this time, it would have to deal with humans. And humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, did not go quietly into the darkness. Admiral Han-Wu stood in the command center of Earth's largest space station, watching the holographic display that showed the spreading zone of nothingness. Red dots marked human colonies that had gone silent in the past 6 hours. Each dot represented millions of lives that had simply stopped existing. "Sir, we're receiving evacuation orders from the Galactic Council," reported his communications officer. "They're telling all species to withdraw to the outer rim sectors, writing off everything inside the danger zone." "Including our colonies?" the Admiral asked, his voice cold. "Yes, sir. They say the human settlements are acceptable losses. They're more concerned with building containment barriers in the outer sectors." Admiral Han-Wu looked at the display. Again, 12 human colonies lay directly in the path of the expanding void. Over 30 million people who had trusted Earth to protect them. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," he said. "We're not abandoning our people. Prepare for immediate deployment to the danger zone." His second-in-command, Captain Dae-Sung, stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, this might be suicide." "We don't even know what we're fighting." "Then we'll learn while we fight," the Admiral replied. "That's what humans do." Dr. Jin-Woo Lee was working around the clock in his laboratory aboard the Prometheus Dawn, trying to understand what they were dealing with. The quantum readings from the entity were unlike anything in known physics. It existed partially outside normal space-time, which made it nearly impossible to study. "It's not just consuming matter and energy," he explained to Captain Minho Park, over the communication link. "It's consuming the very laws that govern reality. Where it passes, the fundamental forces of the universe simply stop working." "Is there any way to fight it?" "Maybe. The same quantum resonance technology that woke it up might be able to affect it. But I would need to get much closer to test the theory." "How much closer?" "Close enough to touch it." Captain Minho Park was quiet for a moment. "Dr. Lee, that's a death sentence." "Maybe. But it might be our only chance to find a weakness." Meanwhile, Commander Dae-Sung was leading a rescue mission to the outer colonies. His Special Forces team had volunteered for the most dangerous job in the galaxy, flying into the expanding zone of nothingness to evacuate survivors. Remember he told his team, as they approached the first colony? "We go in fast, grab whoever we can, and get out. Don't look directly at the void. Don't try to understand what you're seeing. Just focus on the mission." The colony of New Busan was still partially intact, but the void was only hours away. The colonists were loading evacuation ships as fast as they could, but many would not make it in time. "We need more time," the colony administrator told Dae-Sung. "The transport ships can't hold everyone." "Then we make time," Dae-Sung replied. He turned to his team. "Set up the quantum scramblers. We can't stop this thing. Maybe we can slow it down." The quantum scramblers were experimental devices that could disrupt space-time in a small area. They had never been tested in combat. But desperate times called for desperate measures. As they set up the devices, Dae-Sung watched the approaching void. It was like looking at a hole in the universe itself. Where it touched matter, things didn't explode or burn, they simply ceased to exist, leaving not even empty space behind. "Scramblers are online," his tech specialist reported. "But I don't think they'll hold it for long." "They don't need to hold it forever," Dae-Sung said. "They just need to buy us enough time to get these people out." The scramblers activated just as the void reached the colony's outer defense grid. For a moment, the expansion slowed. The entity seemed confused by the quantum interference, as if it had never encountered anything like it before. "It's working," someone shouted. "The void is slowing down." But the victory was short-lived. The entity adapted quickly, learning to work around the interference. Within minutes, it was moving again, consuming the quantum scramblers as easily as everything else. "All ships, emergency departure," Dae-Sung ordered. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before this place stops existing." Back on Earth, Admiral Han-Wu was receiving reports from all over the galaxy. The other species had retreated to safe distances and were building massive energy barriers to contain the threat. But the barriers were designed to keep the entity from spreading further, not to stop it from consuming what was already inside. "They're abandoning us," Captain Daesung reported from the rescue zone. "The Vorthok just told me that Earth's colonies are inside the containment area. They're going to seal us in with this thing." "Then we fight alone," the Admiral replied. "Send a message to every human ship, every colony, every outpost. Tell them we're not running. Tell them we're going to find a way to kill this thing." Dr. Jinwoo Lee had been studying the entity's behavior patterns, and he was starting to understand something important. "It's not just a mindless destroyer," he told Captain Minho Park. "It's intelligent. It learns from everything it consumes. Each world it destroys makes it smarter and more dangerous." "What does that mean for us?" "It means we only get one chance. If we try to attack it and fail, it will learn from our attack and become immune to it. We have to get it right the first time." The first major confrontation came when Admiral Heian Wu's fleet met the entity at the edge of the new Sol system. The human ships opened fire with everything they had: plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, gravity bombs, and experimental weapons that had never been tested in combat. Most of the weapons simply passed through the entity without effect, but some of the quantum-based weapons seemed to cause it pain, creating small distortions in its form that took time to heal. "It can be hurt," the Admiral announced to his fleet. "Focus all quantum weapons on the same point. Let's see how much damage we can do." The concentrated fire seemed to work. The entity's expansion slowed, and for the first time, it appeared to retreat slightly. But as Dr. Jinwoo Lee had predicted, it was learning. Each successive attack was less effective than the last. "It's adapting to our weapons," reported the fleet's science officer. "The quantum resonance is having less effect with each shot." But Admiral Han Wu had noticed something else. "It's not just adapting, it's confused. Look at its movement patterns. It doesn't understand why we're not running." He was right. The entity had consumed thousands of civilizations over millions of years, and they had all reacted the same way, with fear, desperation, and ultimately flight. But humans were different. They were angry. They were defiant. They were attacking something that they couldn't possibly defeat, and they were doing it with what appeared to be genuine joy. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "I'm getting messages from human colonies all over the galaxy. They're not evacuating. They're asking for weapons. They want to fight." Admiral Heian Wu smiled grimly. "Then let's give them what they want. Send the quantum weapon schematics to every human outpost. If this thing wants a fight, we'll give it one. It will never forget." The entity paused in its expansion, something it had never done before. For the first time in millions of years, it had encountered something that puzzled it. These creatures weren't just refusing to flee. They were actively seeking out combat with something infinitely more powerful than themselves. It was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness. They were too stubborn to know when they were beaten. Dr. Hannah Kim stood at the observation deck of the Prometheus Dawn, watching the void consume another star system. She had been trapped in the expanding zone of nothingness for 3 days now, studying the entity while her ship danced around its edges. What she had discovered made her blood run cold. "Captain Park, I need you to listen carefully," she said into her communicator. "This thing hasn't been sleeping for millions of years." "It's been working. Working on what?" Captain Minho. Park's voice crackled through the interference that surrounded the entity. "On us. On all of us. Every species in the galaxy." Hannah pulled up her research data on the main screen. "I've been tracking galactic extinction patterns, and they're not random. They're planned." She showed him the data she had collected. At this, the Zilani Empire. They were developing faster-than-light communication that could work across dimensions. They disappeared overnight. The Mokari Collective. They discovered how to manipulate quantum fields on a planetary scale. Gone. The Hithern Republic. They learned to travel between parallel universes. Extinct. You're saying this entity has been watching us? Not just watching, controlling. Every time a species gets close to real power, close to understanding the deeper mysteries of the universe, something happens to them. A plague, a civil war, a natural disaster. but they're not natural disasters. Captain, they're interventions.
Dr. Jinwoo.
That would explain the quantum signatures I'm detecting. This entity doesn't just exist in our dimension. It exists in all of them at once. It can see every possible future, every path of development. Which means it knew we would find that crystal, Hannah realized. It wanted us to find it. But why? Because humanity is different. We don't follow the normal patterns. Most species become more cautious as they advance. They think before they act. They consider consequences. But humans. Hannah paused, watching a human rescue ship dive directly into the void to save a damaged colony transport. Humans are unpredictable. We do things that don't make sense. Take risks that any rational species would avoid. Specialist Era Moon had been working for hours to establish a quantum communication link through the interference surrounding the entity. When she finally succeeded, the connection revealed something unexpected. Dr. Kim, I'm picking up transmissions from inside the void, she reported. There are survivors in there. That's impossible. Nothing can survive in that nothingness. It's what I thought too, but listen to this. Ada played the transmission. It was weak and distorted, but clearly human. This is Colony Ship New Horizon. We are trapped inside the entity's field. Do not attempt rescue. Pete, do not attempt rescue. The entity is not what we thought. It's not destroying us. It's studying us. Hannah stared at the communication equipment. Get me a direct line to that ship. When the connection was established, the voice on the other end was strained but determined. Dr. Kim, thank God. We thought we were alone in here. How are you still alive? We're not sure. When the void reached us, we expected to die. But instead, we found ourselves in some kind of pocket dimension. The entity has us trapped, but it's keeping us alive. It's running tests on us. Psychological experiments. It's trying to understand how humans think. What kind of tests? It's impossible scenarios. No-win situations. It puts us in danger and watches how we react. And every time we do something it doesn't expect, we sacrifice ourselves for strangers. We fight against hopeless odds. We refuse to give up, even when giving up is the logical choice. Hannah felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. It's never encountered anything like us before. Dr. Kim, the voice continued, we've learned something important. The entity can be fought, but not with weapons. It exists on too many levels for physical force to work. But it can be confused. It can be overwhelmed by paradoxes it cannot resolve. What do you mean? It thinks in terms of logic and survival. It doesn't understand concepts like love, sacrifice, or honor. These things are weaknesses to it, but they're also incomprehensible. If someone could get close enough to its core consciousness. The transmission cut off as another wave of interference swept through the area. Dr. Jinwoo. Lee was working frantically on his quantum weapon design. I think I understand what they're trying to tell us, he said. The entity exists as pure consciousness, spread across multiple dimensions. To hurt it, we need to attack its mind, not its body. How do we attack something's mind? By giving it a problem it cannot solve. A logical paradox that forces it to think in circles. But someone would have to get close enough to merge with its consciousness, close enough to become part of it temporarily. Hannah looked at the void spreading across the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. That's a death sentence, maybe. Or maybe it's the only way to save everyone else. Captain Minho Park's voice cut through their conversation. Dr. Kim, we're getting Reports from Admiral Hien Wu's fleet. The entity is changing its behavior, stopped expanding, and started concentrating its mass. It's forming some kind of physical avatar. And through the observation deck, they could see it happening. The formless void was pulling itself together, creating a massive shape that hurt to look at directly. It was becoming something that could exist in normal space, something that could hunt them more effectively. It's adapting again, Jinwu said. It's learned that we can hurt it with quantum weapons. So it's creating a form that can fight back. Or it's creating a form that can communicate, Hannah said quietly. Maybe it wants to talk, as if responding. To her words, the entity's new avatar turned toward their ship. When it spoke, its voice came through every communication system on the ship at once, a sound like galaxies dying. Humans, you are anomalies. You do not follow the patterns. Explain your nature. Captain Minho Park tried to respond, but Hannah held up her hand. Let me talk to it, she said. I think I know what it wants. She activated the ship's main communicator. We don't follow patterns because we choose not to. We make our own paths. This is inefficient. This is dangerous. This leads to chaos. Yes, it does. And that's exactly why you're afraid of us. There was a long pause. When the entity spoke again, its voice was quieter, almost confused. I do not understand fear. I understand only survival and efficiency. Then you don't understand us at all, Hannah replied. That's why you're going to lose. She looked at Dr. Jinwu Li and Specialist Ara Moon. I know what I have to do. I need to link my consciousness with the entity. I need to show it something it's never seen before. Hannah, no, Captain Minho Park said. There has to be another way. There isn't. Someone has to teach this thing about humanity. Someone has to show it what we really are. She began connecting herself to the quantum communication array. And I need to do it before it learns enough about us to destroy us all. As the connection formed, Hannah felt her mind beginning to expand, touching the vast consciousness of the entity. It was like standing at the edge of an infinite ocean of thought, cold and logical and utterly alien. But she also felt something else. For the first time in millions of years, the entity was uncertain. And in that uncertainty, she saw hope. Dr. Hannah Kim's consciousness drifted through the entity's vast mind like a single candle flame in an endless dark cathedral. The experience was beyond anything human language could describe. She was connected to a being that had existed since before the first stars formed, that had watched the birth and death of countless galaxies. But what struck her most was not the entity's power or its age. It was its loneliness. You've been alone for so long, she whispered into the mental connection. Millions of years with no one who could understand you. Understanding is not required, only compliance. But you want to be understood, don't you? That's why you keep us alive when you consume us. You're trying to figure out how consciousness works, how minds different from yours can exist. For the first time, the entity hesitated before responding. I seek efficiency. I seek perfect order. Consciousness creates chaos, and yet you are conscious yourself. Doesn't that make you part of the chaos you're trying to eliminate? The entity's mental landscape shifted around her, and Hannah felt its confusion like a physical force. This was a being that had never questioned its own existence, never wondered about its own purpose. Meanwhile, Dr. Jinwu Li was working desperately to complete his weapon based on the information Hannah was transmitting from inside the entity's consciousness. The device he was building looked nothing like a traditional weapon. It was more like a complex mathematical equation given physical form. It's not designed to destroy the entity, he explained to Captain Minho Park. It's designed to trap it in a logical paradox, to force it to confront contradictions in its own nature that it cannot resolve. Will it work? If Dr. Kim can plant the right seed of doubt in its mind, yes. But someone will have to carry the device directly into the entity's core consciousness. Whoever does that won't be coming back. Admiral Hanwoo's fleet had regrouped. At the edge of the solar system, preparing for what everyone knew would be a final battle, the entity's avatar had grown larger, consuming more matter to give itself physical form. It was now the size of a small moon, and it was moving toward Earth. All ships, prepare for final approach, the Admiral announced. This is it. We either stop this thing here, or humanity ends today. Engineer Sora Choi had been working around the clock to modify the fleet's ships for the assault. The quantum shielding will protect us from the entity's reality warping effects, but only for a few minutes. After that, the shields will burn out and we'll be defenseless. A few minutes will have to be enough, Admiral Han Wu replied.
Dr.
Lee, how long do you need to deploy your weapon? 30 seconds once I'm at the core. But getting there will take everything we have. Commander Dae-sung volunteered to lead the final assault team. My people and I will clear a path. We'll get Dr. Lee to the core no matter what it takes. This is a suicide mission, the Admiral said quietly. Yes, sir. We know. Dae-sung looked at his team, all volunteers who had left messages for their families. But it's the only way to save everyone else. Inside the entity's consciousness, Hannah was making a disturbing discovery. You've been changing, she told the entity. Every time you consume a civilization, you absorb part of their knowledge, their culture, their way of thinking. You're not the same being you were 1,000,000 years ago. Change is corruption. I maintain purity of purpose. But you can't maintain purity while absorbing other minds. You've become a collection of every species you've ever consumed. You're not one consciousness anymore. You're thousands of them, all trying to exist in the same space. The entity's mental landscape convulsed. Around her, this is not possible. I am singular. I am pure. Then explain why you're talking to me instead of simply consuming me. Explain why you're curious about humanity instead of just destroying us. Those aren't your original thoughts. They're thoughts you absorbed from other species. For the first time in its existence, the entity began to doubt itself. The final battle began when Admiral Han Wu's fleet entered the entity's defensive field. The space around the avatar twisted and warped, making navigation nearly impossible. Ships that got too close simply ceased to exist, leaving no trace behind. Quantum scramblers, fire, the Admiral ordered. The experimental weapons created pockets of disrupted space-time that seemed to confuse the entity, creating windows of opportunity for the human ships to advance. Commander Dae-sung led his assault team through the chaos. Darting between the entity's attacks, stay close to the quantum disruptions, he called to his team. Don't give it a clear shot at you. Dr. Jinwoo Lee sat in the back of Dae-sung's fighter, clutching his paradox weapon. The device was humming, with quantum energy ready to deploy the moment they reached the entity's core. How will we know when we're close enough? Dae-sung asked. Trust me, you'll know. They punched through the entity's outer defenses just as their quantum shields began to fail. Half the assault team was lost in seconds, their ships simply vanishing. As the entity's attention focused on them, there, Jinwoo pointed at a swirling vortex of energy at the center of the avatar. That's the core consciousness. That's where Hannah is. But as they approached, the entity spoke, its voice booming across all frequencies. Humans, you persist in futile resistance. I will show you the fate of all who oppose order. The avatar began to change, growing larger and more complex. It was no longer just consuming matter. It was reshaping reality itself, turning the space around Earth into something that followed its own alien laws of physics. It's not just fighting us, Engineer Sora Choi reported from the fleet command ship. It's trying to remake the entire solar system in its own image. Inside the entity's consciousness, Hannah felt the change happening. The being's doubt was being overwhelmed by anger and frustration. It was preparing to do something that would ensure humanity could never threaten it again. You're going to destroy us all, aren't you? She asked. I will remake you. I will make you efficient. I will remove the chaos from your minds. And in doing so, you'll become just like every other tyrant in history. You'll become the very thing you claim to oppose. I am not like them. I am pure. I am perfect. No, Hannah said softly. You're afraid. You're afraid that maybe, just maybe, chaos is better than order. Maybe imperfection is more beautiful than perfection. Maybe the very things you're trying to eliminate are what make existence worth having. The entity's consciousness recoiled from her words as if they were physical blows. These were concepts it had never considered, ideas that struck at the foundation of its existence, Dr. Jinwoo Lee's fighter reached the core, just as the entity's defenses began to overwhelm them. Now or never. Daesun called out as their shields finally failed. Jinwoo activated the paradox weapon and dove toward the swirling vortex of the entity's consciousness. As he merged with its mental landscape, he felt Hannah's presence one last time. "Goodbye, Dr. Kim," he whispered. "Goodbye, Dr. Lee. Make it count." The weapon activated, and suddenly the entity found itself confronting the ultimate paradox. It was a being of perfect order that had spent millions of years creating chaos. It was a singular consciousness that contained multitudes. It was trying to eliminate imperfection while being imperfect itself. The logical contradiction tore through its mind like a virus, spreading faster than it could adapt. For the first time in its existence, the entity was forced to confront the possibility that it might be wrong. And in that moment of doubt, it began to tear itself apart. Dr. Jinwoo Lee found himself floating in a space that existed between thoughts, between dimensions, between the concepts of existence and nothingness. The paradox weapon had worked, but not in the way he had expected. Instead of destroying the entity, it had created a prison made of pure logic, a maze of contradictions that the ancient being could not escape. But someone had to maintain the prison. Someone had to stay here and ensure that the entity remained trapped in its own confusion. "Understand now," Jinwoo said to the swirling chaos around him. "You're not evil. You're just afraid. Afraid of change. Afraid of things you can't control. Afraid of being alone." The entity's voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once, weaker now, confused. "I sought only perfection, only peace. But perfection without choice isn't perfection at all. It's just emptiness." Jinwoo felt his consciousness expanding, merging with the quantum field that held the entity trapped. Peace without freedom isn't peace, it's death. What will become of me, you'll learn. For the first time in millions of years, you'll have time to think without the need to control everything around you. Maybe you'll discover that chaos isn't something to be feared. Maybe you'll find that imperfection is what makes existence beautiful. As Jinwoo spoke, he felt his human consciousness spreading throughout the prison, becoming its foundation. Would spend eternity here, keeping the entity contained, but also teaching it about concepts it had never understood? Love, sacrifice, hope, and the courage to let others choose their own paths. "Will I remember who I was?" the entity asked, and for the first time its voice sounded almost human. "I'll help you remember," Jinwoo promised, "and I'll help you discover who you could become." Outside the prison, in normal space and time, the entity's avatar was collapsing. The massive form that had threatened to consume the solar system was breaking apart, its matter returning to the natural state of space dust and energy. Admiral Heian Wu watched from his command ship as the immediate threat ended. "All ships. Report status." "The void zones are stabilizing," came the reply from his science officer. "Whatever Dr. Lee did, it's working. The entity is contained." Captain Minho Park's voice crackled over the communication system. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Dr. Kim and Dr. Lee. The quantum disruption around the entity's core is too strong to penetrate. Are they alive?" "Unknown, sir. The mission appears to be successful." On the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Kyung-min was witnessing something unprecedented. The alien species that had fled in terror were slowly returning, their ships cautious but curious. The Vorthok ambassador, who had abandoned his post just days earlier, approached her with what might have been respect in his reptilian eyes. "Your species has done something that was thought impossible," he said. "You have faced the unnamed terror and survived. More than survived, you have contained it." "At great cost," Kyung-min replied, thinking of the scientists who had sacrificed themselves. "All great victories require great sacrifices. But your people did something else, something that changes everything." "What do you mean?" "You chose to fight when every logical analysis said you should flee. You chose to sacrifice individuals to save multitudes. You chose hope over despair, courage over safety. These are not the actions of a primitive species." Elder Yunishin joined the conversation, her elderly face showing both exhaustion and pride. "What happens now?" The Vorthok ambassador gestured toward the great assembly hall where representatives from hundreds of species were gathering. Now your species takes its place among the guardians of the galaxy. The entity you contained was not the only ancient threat sleeping in the dark spaces between stars. There are others. And now we know that there is at least one species brave enough and foolish enough to face them. Captain Minho Park returned to Earth to deliver his report to the planetary government. Standing before the World Council, he tried to explain what had happened in terms that civilian leaders could understand. Dr. Kim and Dr. Lee are gone, he said simply. But their sacrifice has saved not just humanity, but every thinking being in the galaxy. The entity that we accidentally awakened has been contained, though not destroyed. It exists now in a state of quantum suspension, trapped by its own contradictions. Is the threat over? Asked the council chairman. Is this threat? Yes, but Elder Shin's research suggests there may be others. The galaxy is full of ancient dangers that most species are too afraid to confront. That makes us valuable. Valuable how? Is the species willing to light fires in the darkness? Is the people who don't know enough to be afraid of things that should terrify us? Commander Dae-sung was awarded the highest honors Earth could bestow, but he seemed uncomfortable with the attention. We just did what humans do, he told the press. We saw our friends in danger, and we went to help them. We saw our people threatened, and we fought back. Any human would have done the same. But no other species did, a reporter pointed out. Then, maybe that's what makes us special. Not that we're smarter or stronger than anyone else. It's just that we're too stubborn to give up. 6 months later, the first alien embassy was established on Earth. Not a diplomatic outpost, but a full embassy. With cultural exchange programs and joint research projects, the Vorthok, who had once seen humans as barbaric newcomers, now sent their best students to study human philosophy and psychology. We wish to understand how a species can be both logical and illogical at the same time. The Vorthok education, Minister explained. How you can calculate odds and then deliberately choose the path with the worst chances of success. How you can be terrified of something and yet run toward it instead of away from it. The Galactic Council established what they called the Jin-Woo Protocol, a set of procedures for dealing with ancient cosmic threats that required not just military force, but the kind of desperate creativity that seemed to be uniquely human. Elder Yuna Shin was appointed as the first human representative to the Ancient Threats Committee, a new organization dedicated to studying and preparing for the kind of dangers that lurked in the deep spaces between civilizations. The entity we faced was just the first, she told the assembled representatives. My research suggests there are others. Things that have been sleeping since before the first galaxies formed. Things that make our recent enemy look small by comparison. You believe humanity should seek them out? Asked the Luminar representative, its energy form flickering with concern. I believe humanity will seek them out whether we want them to or not, Yuna replied. That's who we are. We see something dangerous and unknown, and our first instinct is to poke it with a stick to see what happens. The question is whether the rest of the galaxy wants to help us, or just watch from a safe distance while we make all the dangerous discoveries. In the quantum prison that existed between dimensions, Dr. Jin-Woo Lee continued his eternal conversation with the entity that had once threatened all existence. The ancient being was learning slowly, painfully, to understand concepts that had never occurred to it before. Why did your species choose to fight? It asked one day. Logic suggested that flight was the optimal strategy, because running away meant abandoning people we cared about, Jin-Woo explained, and we've never been very good at that. But the risk to yourselves was enormous. The probability of success was minimal. Sometimes the right thing to do isn't the smart thing to do. Sometimes you have to choose between what's logical and what's right, and humans usually choose what's right. Even if it means destruction, especially then. We'd rather fail trying to do the right thing than succeed by doing the wrong thing. The entity contemplated this for what might have been years or centuries. Time had no meaning in their prison. I begin to understand why your species troubles me so much. You are willing to accept paradox as natural. You embrace contradiction as part of existence. And that scares you, doesn't it? Yes, it suggests that perhaps my pursuit of perfect order was itself a form of chaos. that in trying to eliminate contradiction, I became the greatest contradiction of all. Now you're starting to think like a human, Jinwoo said with a smile that existed only in thought. Welcome to the club. On Earth, children learned about Dr. Kim and Dr. Lee in their history classes, about the scientists who had accidentally awakened an ancient evil and then sacrificed everything to stop it, about the day humanity proved that sometimes the best way to fight the darkness is to light a fire, even if you don't know how big the fire will become. And in the deep spaces between stars, other ancient things stirred in their slumber, drawn by the light of that fire. Some were curious, some were hungry. Some were angry that their long peace had been disturbed, but humanity was ready for them, because humans had learned something important about themselves during the crisis. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but they were the species that lit fires in the darkness, and sometimes that was exactly what the universe needed.